Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing? If you hear my fan in the background, that's because the AC in my apartment complex is out, and already, even in the middle of April, it is hot and swampy in the southeast. So we're gonna have to deal with the fan. So give me a second to tweet out that this is live. I hope you guys enjoyed my high quality thumbnail. I'm not going to say that I am proud of it per se, but I mean, it was fun to make. All right, yeah. Sorry, guys. These are the things that I should have done before I go live. Got distracted shit posting on Twitter instead of prepping for the stream, which never happens to me. I promise. I'm nothing but the most professional streamer on this platform. Okay, and we have that handled. All right. Wow. Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of new names in chat. So, yeah, Connor, that's 100% true. I'm just going through an absolute schizophrenic meltdown, and you guys aren't real. You're just voices in my head. But actually, to get to the issue at hand, so to speak, what we're going to be doing is reading through a document that I have in my hand. And so the background story on this that I've kind of aped a little bit in the title of this video, as well as the thumbnail, is I have access to essentially the document set out by a Methodist church that recently split. So for those who don't know, the Methodist Church, mainline Protestant church in America, recently has started to split over the issue of homosexuality, right? So a lot of times, when you see like cursed Protestant nonsense, it'll be, these extremely liberal, mainline Protestant churches. But the problem is these denominations are fairly large and there are conservative members. Most infamously, the African Methodist Church is extremely conservative, but also, in my area of the country, which is, rural and very white and very, very conservative, there are still Methodists, but they're normal people, right? They're farmers, they're small business owners, and they're socially conservative. So one of the things that is interesting about this is following through this story through what they've published. And to spoil the end of it, thankfully, this church did decide to break away, basically saying like, hey, sorry, we're not cool with the gays, gone. I have Paul W. Hall. It is more of an implosion than anything else. So I'm going to read, and this is 6 pages. Never mind, that's 4 pages, excuse me, front to back. And I'll be skipping over it, editing out details. But what we will do is through this, and obviously I'll be skipping the stuff that you can imagine. Like, I won't be reading the position of the people who don't support homosexuality, because you guys can guess what they're going to say. But in both examining, how they went around it and also the tactics used, it's sort of like a microcosm of what we see in wider society. It should be, no surprise to you guys, right, that the people who were pushing this hard were not regular attendees. They were not people involved in the church. They were social climbers. They were social strivers. And even in, a backwater town in rural Virginia, they wanted to be on side with the regime, and they were willing to take this church and really like almost push it to the breaking point. It was very narrowly decided. And I'll tell you exactly why that matters in a little bit. All right. Dear church family, many thanks to all those who participated in our straw poll on February the 5th. while this vote did not reach the supermajority that is required for our official vote for disaffiliation, it was clear with a vote of 65% to 35% that the majority of members in our church would prefer to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. All right. So that's interesting, right? Because what do we hear in that? They've already voted on this issue once in the church service, right, with the normal attendees. They've voted, and that was a 65% of people said they wanted to leave. But you'll notice the way that this vote was set up is that, that's not good enough. Not a simple majority, not even a significant majority. Well, you have to get 2/3. And even when it's 1%, that means we have to go back for another round. This is very similar to what's happened in the EU, right? Like maybe you didn't vote well enough the first time. We have to run it back, so to speak. That's just an interesting thing, and you'll see that trend through the rest of it. Basically, the next part of the document is describing, what it happens, what it means to disaffiliate, which basically means to say, hey, we don't stand by, the denomination's opinions on homosexuality. We're out, so to speak. So I'll skip to the position against disaffiliation. So basically, people who want to stick with gay church. Okay, these are a series of bullet points. Number 1, we remain in the United Methodist Church, blah, 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 blah. We will remain, this is particularly interesting, the United Methodist Church retains ownerships of the building, property, and bank account. So essentially, they're giving up all of the property of this community, even if they agree to stay in. That's now owned by the top-down, essentially gay-controlled organization. New leadership will be immediately appointed. So, right, not only will you give up all of your assets to us if you stay with us, but we get to appoint new leadership. Essentially, they talk about they will also put in a new pastor. They will pay him quite a bit per month. Again, most Sunday school teachers will be replaced. And we acknowledge that the UMC passed 3 resolutions, which will also be passed in this jurisdiction, which includes the following. And this is a classic example, right, of what I call the all good things, no bad things strategy, which they include the following. The leading with integrity resolution. Because, of course, you can't oppose this if you don't want. If you oppose this, you must oppose leading with integrity, right? How could you oppose the leading with integrity resolution? Well, how about this? I'll read to you what the leading with integrity resolution is. It urges those who intend to disaffiliate from the UMC to recuse themselves from leadership roles in an effort to move forward towards fairness and integrity. So basically, if you vote against us and you lose, you'll be kicked out of leadership. For the sake of integrity, of course. You don't just have to purge you. And you saw that before, right? We'll have a new pastor, we'll have new Sunday school, we'll have to do everything. And they'll get heavily paid. So you see the carrot and the stick. And again, all put under the title of leading with integrity, right? It's shocking how brazen they are. So this is also funny because you notice I used kind of a deliberately absurd amount of letters, when I described the gay church, right? It is only slightly, I only added two-spirit. All of the others are there in their version. The Justice and Empowerment for LGBTQAI2S people resolution. There are 2 pluses in this. Urges the denomination to support alphabet people affirm a moratorium on lawsuits and complaints surrounding sexual orientation, not to pursue or resolve in a non-punitive and just manner complaints against bishops around their sexual orientation or who officiate alphabet weddings and support elections of bishops who uphold this. So, right. The first part is kind of what you expect. Basically, we'll stop prosecuting, within the internal court system, bishops who violated our previous policy. But Connor, they might just mean that I'm dyslexic. I'm not sure. Okay. So, but the last two parts of this one is, in addition, and this is going back to the consolidation of power, which is one, we also resolve to anything that's currently in, like under judgment, right? We're going to resolve that in a non-punitive and just way, which basically says you're going to get paid off. But the last one is particularly interesting, that last thought in it, and support the election of bishops who support this. So again, you see buried in all of this is this idea of essentially a turnover. We're going to get rid of all the old, we're going to get rid of all the way down to Sunday school teachers, right? To people in the choir. We're going to get rid of all of them. We're going to replace them with new people, pay them handsomely, take your property, and then make you promise to recuse yourself if you disagree. Again, it's wild just how extremely just brazen this is. All right. And C. The U.S. Regional Conference resolution urges the denomination to support proposals and expedite processes to create. This is actually particularly interesting. This part, I mentioned the African churches are particularly conservative. As you remember, but this one is kind of an interesting confluence between like the BS sprinkled on top of like this anti-racist woke religion, and the need for power. So I'll read this in full. C. The U.S. Regional Conference resolution urges the denomination to support proposals and expedite the process to help create a regional conference and support the Christmas covenant and connectional tables proposals in that vein. But that doesn't mean anything. This essentially allows the U.S. to vote on their own issues without the influence of the global, quote, African votes. So essentially, they're cutting out the Africans, which I think is funny. That these people are so worried about racism, but quite literally, they are just cutting out the African churches because they don't like them. So what's interesting about this is this set up a situation in which there was a tiered system of possibilities to this, right? So we saw at first that you needed a super majority to leave. Right? They already voted to leave, but they only, and I quote, only got 65% of the vote. Now what this did, and I'm just going to simplify the procedures because I realize it's not super interesting, is it kicked them to a next round. And in this next round, essentially what they needed is if the people who wanted to stay, who wanted to be gay church, got 51%, they win. They become a gay church, right? They give up all their property. There's a huge turnover of staff. If they win, 50 plus 1%. Now, if the people who want to leave get 50 plus 1%, well, what do they get? You'd think, right, that they're allowed to leave. They're allowed to keep their building. They're allowed to keep their bank account. No. They own all, the denomination owns all of their stuff, owns their bank accounts, the entire contents of it, their property, this building, which is worth, a couple $1 million, everything. The only way you get the right to purchase it, because before it doesn't matter, you could pay them all the money in the world. The way you get the right to purchase it is that 2/3 majority. So you have to vote a super majority to even get the right to keep your own property, to keep the money in the coffers you donated to your church. And the reason this is interesting is that, and I've said before that I'm Presbyterian, and there's kind of a similar breakdown of, extremely conservative, which is where I go, and extremely liberal, Presbyterians, right? And this happened to my church in the mid 2000s over much the same issue. And my church was in a very similar situation, but my church voted, I think it was like 90% to leave. But we were forced to buy our building, which was a nice old building in a large part of town, and actually made headlines. In the mid 2000s, basically, church pulls together, a couple $1 million to buy their building. And that's a tried and true tactic, right? They'll let you leave, but they're gonna extract their pound of flesh and then some. All right. So the next section, in addition to this, setting up this kind of like head I win, tails you lose situation, is the answers to your questions section, which is kind of just other, it was procedural details of it. So the first one is essentially, a description of what is the current doctrine of this church, on homosexuality, which is basically what happened is like, this is what the people who want to leave say we still believe, which is basically marriage is only between a man and a woman. You aren't allowed to be, a practicing homosexual and be a bishop. You can't marry a bishop, or you can't as a bishop, marry a same-sex couple, which is, pretty normal among Christian denominations, right? Basically and this is hard because the conservative cases laid out in this, which I won't read, are not particularly sophisticated. There's a small church with kind of like normal people in it. And so I don't want to be punitive towards them. I think in many ways it's someone who's not necessarily super exposed to these issues, again, because it's a small church in the middle of nowhere. And so they're not necessarily the most, I don't know, the most, I don't want to be punitive here, the most like sophisticated, highbrow arguments. What's interesting, right, is the opposition lays out some of the things that I think are funny, articulate would have been better, Sneedmaster, is one of the things that's brought up. And you hear this all the time with kind of like liberal Christian Svenny Stripe is like, oh, well, like, modern Christians don't eat shellfish, and it says in the Bible not to eat shellfish. Or, the common thing you hear about, like 2 fibers of different cloth. There's, things that were essentially like cultural rules for Bronze Age Jews, for running a Bronze Age society, right? And it's like, obviously that's not for us. Lou Templar and I actually did a stream on this. We did a stream on this where he basically talks about the difference between the biblical covenants given to, the Hebrews, God's chosen people, then given to the rest of us, right? The Gentiles, they're a different set of laws. And the ones, before Christ that you and I would be beholden to are basically, and I might be missing some here, don't murder, don't eat live animals, get married, have courts of law, and be a monotheist. And like, basically, if you've got those 5, at least, before the second covenant, like, you're good to go. So that's basically, and those obviously still apply, the rules that you and I are beholden to. Obviously, this is stupid. It's a bad argument. It's not made in good faith. So there's a whole section on this, going through, and this, I'll read out the headlines: homosexuality versus dietary laws and other Jewish ceremonial traditions, which again, I won't get into. It's a stupid argument. One of the things that I think is interesting is because, the Methodists are on the more liberal side of Protestantism, like even the ones that are not okay with gay stuff. And they're okay with, they're probably, if you can imagine a spectrum, several spots to the left, of the church that I go to. And I'm not saying this in like a bitchy way of, trying to like tear them down. But it is interesting to see how they say like, oh, well, we've already compromised on women. We'll let women preach. We'll let women teach, but no further. We have decided the exact point. And again, I'm not trying to be punitive here, but it is interesting, right? That you do have this problem where like, unless you put your foot down, it's the narrow end of the wedge, so to speak. So they talk about why they would want to remain in and why they haven't left before. And I think it's an honorable instinct, which is basically, hey, like, we don't want to be the ones that break up a community, and fair enough. But I think that it's interesting with this is you see how these people operate on bad faith, right? They're not doing this because they actually care what the community wants. They're doing it because essentially they want to either gloat over their enemies by winning, or they want to screw their enemies over even if they win. So for instance, right, the idea that they get to keep the building, even if, 65% of the congregation wants to leave, is absurd, right? Like if you have a church in a small town and, 65% of the people leave, It's a dead church. It's a giant empty building with no one in it, but it'll be pure. They'll have a gay flag out front. And it's obvious that they don't care about the institution. They're using it as a stick to beat their enemies. And so coming through this, and don't worry, guys, I've got, more pages to go through. It became, very, very clear that this is not genuine. This is not, a good faith effort. And I think that it's important to show examples like this to your, kind of like normal conservative, family members, because I think a lot of the people in this situation, at least up until the very end, assumed that this was a fair fight, that this is, we'll have a vote, we'll decide whether to stay or whether to go. And that's what happened in that first vote, right? Everyone just was like, oh, well, it's Sunday morning, we're going to decide what to do. And 65% of the audience or the congregation said, we want to leave. But that wasn't good enough. And we'll get into, right, some of the tactics that actually went into this, because it's kind of interesting. And I actually wish there's a document referenced in this that I do not have access to. I wish I did. Like I said, this is the church that my roommate went to as a kid. So he's technically a member. He still gets mail from there, but it's not where he attends, so to speak. Morgoth. I don't know if that's Morgoth or someone else named Morgoth. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's soon. There's a chance that it could be one of the ones that breaks away. But a lot of the quote unquote like prestige older Protestant denominations have just been eaten. And it's very much a fact of life in Blue America. I have more sympathy for like evangelical and non-denominational culture than a lot of people, because you have to understand why it exists. And it exists in reaction to stuff like this. Because like, what are you going to do? When the big organization that you're associated with decides that you have to give up, you have to start doing butt marriages, and you don't want to do that. You're going to leave. You don't want to be associated with those people. I get it. And so fair enough. Maybe you get into kind of a stupid little, like circle jerk about it. And that's, again, these aren't necessarily sophisticated people, but they're good people, and so I feel like with stuff like that, I can't really blame them. The people who should be their leaders have dropped the ball. Watario Vid saying that they had a gay bishop, Anglican gay bishop in the mid 2000s. Yeah. Again, in New Hampshire, right, which is the Northeast, it's where you'd expect it, but still, right. Like these people are all too willing. Yeah. But no, and you're right. Same thing. And I live in the Bible Belt, and all of these churches, the church with the gay flag out front, no one goes. And they're beautiful old buildings. And a lot of times they drove out perfectly good congregations, congregations of people who wanted to go there, but they drove them out. They kicked them out. And so their buildings are, lying fallow. Many of them are being turned into apartment buildings, and there are other people who'd be happy to go in. But again, these people would rather see these buildings go empty than dangerous, reactionary, Christians be inside them. Pale Reckoning. I cannot read that, but that did make me laugh. Okay. So yeah, look at this. The disaffiliation fee, even if they get to that 2/3 magical number, right? The best possible outcome, they have to pay a $350,000 disaffiliation fee, in addition to lawyers, in addition to everything else. So what's interesting about this is, and I don't have these documents before me, but I did look at them before, right? Or all of the chicanery that went into this. So when the two sides set out their opposing documents, the first one from the conservative faction was very much what you'd expect. Like, here's what you believe. Here's what it means to, vote to leave. This is why we want to do it. But the liberal side, right, which was run by, essentially like white liberal boomer women and spiritual boomers as well. Well, they started playing hardball. So one of the first things they do is they set out an anonymous letter, basically that was a disinformation campaign. And what it said is like, oh, this council has met, and they've decided that you can agree to stay, but you don't have to accept homosexuality, which is a flat out lie. That's the core issue at hand. And they sent that out to the entire membership of this church, in the entire congregation, unsigned, printed on a facsimile of church stationery, basically as a diversion, as a way to either get people to stay home or to vote for something that they weren't into. And all of a sudden, people kind of realize, like, wait a minute, they're playing. This is dirty pool. This is essentially, these people are willing to lie, cheat, and steal. So one of the other things that happens is, and this was put out technically under, this was more legitimate than that, is they also said, well, we'll pick you up. We'll drive to your house and then drive you to the polling place. How's that for familiar, right? Then they started going around and knocking on the doors of people who were still on the registry, but hadn't come to church, 2, 3, 4 years. See if they could get them to vote. Then they started, bringing in their kids, their kids, multiple generations of people who didn't live in the community, weren't directly tied to it, but they were all allied in one thing. And that was essentially, taking this church and blowing it apart. They're willing to cheat. They're willing to lie. They're willing to, effectively, and they have, right? They're willing to steal. And thankfully, like I said in the beginning, it didn't work. We got the best possible, resolution out of this, which is that you get to leave at only the cost of $350,000. And yeah, exactly, Connor. That's how leftists made literally all of their gains. They lie about it first, and then they do exactly what they want. And what they want is what I read, saying that if you voted the wrong way, you'll be forced to step down from all, positions in the church. We'll have to bring in new people. We'll have to pay them a lot of money. We'll have to affirm that, this is what we want. And we'll have to, basically block out everyone who could ever disagree with us again. Essentially it's sweet like antifreeze, right? And I don't know. Again, maybe this isn't the best idea for a solo stream, but I think it's interesting as kind of a prism, right, of how these people operate, which is when they set their sights on an institution, they will set up the battlefield in their advantage, right? They'll set it up that you need not just to win, but you need to decisively win. And even when you win, right, there's a barb in it. You never get away fully unscathed. And so, you know what? Okay. Our guys were able to keep their church, which is, no small thing. They were able to, drive out these ghouls. They were able to keep their place of worship, their community, which is something. But even in that, right, their price is they had to donate $350,000. And look, like, I'm not going to get into details, but that's a lot of money, for a small church in rural America where people aren't wealthy, don't have a lot of liquid cash. And that money, they're going to be paying, I think they mortgaged it for 25 years, is going to be, ensuring that, the rainbow progress flag of, American government sponsored Christianity is going to be flying with their hard earned dollars, just a little bit longer. And so anyway, guys, that's kind of the end of my, explicit content. I've been doing more of these so I can build up a backlog for when I go on my honeymoon. So I have a little bit of a buffer. You guys won't notice a drop in content. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy these. It helps me feel like there's a little bit more of a connection between me and you guys that I just scream to at the in the void, so to speak. But if you guys have any any questions or any more details about the situation, just let me know, because I'm going to try and go for a full hour, which means we have a another 30 minutes before we wrap things up. I guess I did make it. I did make it, Connor. Yeah. And honestly, 30 minutes of unbroken talking by me is not too bad. I've been I enjoy the interviews, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel slightly bad that I'm not contributing enough of my own thoughts to the conversation, so to speak. And obviously not bad enough to actually change my behavior, but these kind of allay those feelings, so to speak. Again, I have kind of postmodern feelings about, religion and Christianity. And I realize that these are not particularly like evangelical or like, missionary feelings. But to be honest, it's like, if someone has a Christian tradition that they're tied to, that their ancestors are tied to, it's kind of like, well, who am I to get in the way of that? I think that, like, when I look at the enemy that we're fighting, I don't know. It's kind of us versus modernity, us versus the machine more than anything else. And so, like, to me, and I realize that, like the Protestants and the Lutherans all have, and the Catholics and the Orthodox all have their, they're people who are quite convinced by any one argument. But to me, it's kind of like, well, I'm a Protestant, I'm a Calvinist, because I'm a white guy from the South. It's because of where I live. It's because of who I am. It's my, my heritage, both ethnically and philosophically. And I couldn't be anything else. It would be fake. It would be putting on a mask. And maybe you could say, like, oh, well, if you're convinced of the eternal truth of something, like, to what is the sacrifice of putting on that mask? But at least from my perspective, it's kind of like, well, I don't know. Nothing else would feel right to me. Melon in chat. Most people in my community stopped going to church around 2008. The financial crash destroyed a lot of marriages, and a lot of people's faith. Oh, hey, Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. Good to see you again. Dimmadome and I eventually, it might take a few weeks. We'll probably start doing just kind of cozy, tabletop simulator streams, just something to, just something fun and casual. Because I enjoy these heavier topics, but it's fun to joke around a little bit. It's interesting because I'm on the younger end of things, and so I was a kid during the financial crash, but I remember it. It's weird. One of my best friends is, in his late 30s, early 40s now. Actually, several of them, Bagby included, and it's interesting talking to them about what it was like to enter the workforce, in the middle of a collapse like that. Just because, you are vulnerable in a weird way. And look, I'm lucky, I have a community, I have, a job, I have things under me, but it is an interesting time to be alive. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I definitely know that a lot of people's marriages, blew up during the financial crisis, right? It seems like maybe, I don't know if less or more of that happened during COVID. I guess people were around a lot. I know there was a baby boom, but also I know that there was a lot of domestic abuse. So who knows, right? Jacob J, I gave you a wrench during this stream, and I'm kind of regretting that. Although I will say I got raided, I think, for my first time on last night's episode. I had multiple guys, or maybe the same guys, spurging out at me, calling me a homosexual, which, is kind of par for the course as far as the internet goes. But also I had a bunch of people saying, like, oh, name them, name them, talk about the them, so to speak. And I don't know. It's one of those things that I just find completely retarded, to use a word that I'm not supposed to use, because it's like, look, like I don't always do a good job, but I try to say things discreetly, right? Where if you're one of us, if you are reading between the lines, a lot of times you get what I'm saying. Ethno-sectarian interests, my favorite Middle Eastern country, so on and so forth. And you can get a lot of things across without just, screeching. And the thing about the screeching is like, what end does that serve? It gets you, if you're real, personally in the moment, a little bit of kind of a hit, right? A parasocial thing, like, oh, I made the streamer mad. But short of that, short of getting a rise out of it, it's like, well, what does that accomplish? Okay, you get an account banned. Okay, if you're an anon groiper, that doesn't really matter. But if you've actually put time and effort into something, like, you don't really want to get it banned. If it happens, it happens, right? But just, wasting it all is just stupid. Like, I look, like, I'm not trying to like be over the top about it, because this is fun. It's a hobby for me, but like, I don't want to throw away, 115 odd videos, 100 episodes of a podcast, a decent enough audience, at least for the dissident right, especially to appease, an anime PFP in the chat. Again, it's like, I don't want to be overly, I don't want to be overly chin stroking about it, but like, I don't know. It's like, why are you doing this? If you're just doing it to be an edgy teenager, it's like, okay, man, but like, that isn't a way to build a movement. And it's part of the reason that I've been, and I think this is maybe what I did to kind of call this down on my own head, is I've been kind of anti-groiper. I've been kind of anti, the orange juice crowd, the people who are Ye 24, because I don't see them as serious, because I see it as just like a joke. And obviously jokes are fun. We've got a lot of ground through jokes. The left made a lot of progress through jokes, through ridiculing, through pointing out the contradictions, in the ideological like superstructure of the system, right? Voltra, I actually do have an Odyssey. I don't really use it I don't check it actively. I pretty much only use Odyssey to watch black pilled videos. But I guess I should check, because my full content is backed up. Sorry, let me just. All right, well, I'll get into that sooner or later. But I do have an Odyssey, and I like it, but I just don't want to have to depend on it as like my one lifeline, because even if, well, to you, oh, wow, look at that. Someone bought me 10 whole coffees, which was really kind. This is why I need to check this email more often. All right. Sorry. But yeah, I do have a Odyssey account, and I actually like Odyssey quite a bit as a, anyway, sorry. I'll have to sort that out in a little bit. I know my live tech support is not so bad, but yeah, I don't know, man. It just seems like a waste of time. I'm not going to throw away something that took a while to build, just to appease some, autist in chat. All right, give me a second, guys. I got to drink water. All right, I'm back. Yes, Zhang, it is to get you to say something bannable. Yeah, and honestly, I've probably tested that. I have probably tested that enough already. Just because I kind of can't help myself. The one way you guys know I'm not a Fed is I'm just genuinely like couldn't keep it up long enough. Like, I can't shut up. I just kind of say things. And yeah, I do not have the I do not have the skill set to keep a civil tongue in my head. Yeah, life after death. Leftist tactics won't work for the right because we are inherently different. To use the catchphrase of the show, I completely agree. We are of kind of a different substance. And so the Olimskyite tactics, that some on the right have adopted of trying to hold them to their own standards, it's stupid. It doesn't work. And it so obviously doesn't work. And like, to be honest, like if it did, like if we had W's from making them, pointing out that they were racist, fair enough. But it's never worked once. There's not been one time. And so honestly, it's just like, well, you know what? I want to win. You know, I'm tired of losing. And it's like, well, okay, man, like if you've rolled 100 times in a row, you know, maybe you're using a set of busted dice. You know, maybe you're playing a rigged game. And to quote a you know, a great philosopher of our time, the game was rigged from the start. Paul W. Hall, I think broadly revolutionary tactics have a place on the right, but it's a fine line between that and proper leftist tactics. Yes. The leftoids have entropy pulling on their side. And so they don't really, they get to kind of, they're pushing downhill. You know, they have entropy of this like force of gravity kind of helping them along. And so we do have to operate differently. All right. Cool. I get this so rarely that I actually do get this. This is funny. I have very occasionally will post a short just because they're kind of fun. And they're good for getting out those kind of like one-off ideas that are, you know, enough to make something out of, you know, but not necessarily enough to, okay, wow, I'm actually doing decent views. I mean, for Odyssey, right? Like I'm getting like 30 some views a video, which is pretty good for Odyssey. So look, maybe I will put some more focus over there. Do some exclusives. Arthur Dane, good to see you, man. I concur. Shorts are okay. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. The shorts are they're a crime of opportunity. Yeah, it's not exactly where I'm putting my full creative vision, so to speak. Sneedmaster 37. I heard something good the other day. The left does not have principles; they have goals. That's well said. And that article or that, you know, document that I went through at the start of the stream, I think demonstrates that neatly, where you see the alleged principles of that group, you know, which is, you know, quote unquote democracy, which is, you know, supporting the alphabet people, supporting, you know, racial minorities. Well, those go out the window because what they really want is power. And if they can't settle for power, if they can't get power, they'll settle for making you miserable, you know, for ruining your life, for charging you a whole bunch of money. And yeah, it's simple as that. Bolero 393, are you going to the Nashville event? I would not going to confirm it, but most definitely I'll be there. I am currently writing pitches to send off because I'd like to speak there because I am quite poor and I'm enough of a narcissist to think that I have things to say. But either way, I will be there because, you know, I want to meet the boys. So yeah, I can't 100% confirm it, but you know, if it's possible, I will be there. Okay. Let me pull this. Wait, did I lose internet? Oh, okay. No, I just left chat for a little bit because YouTube is a little bit funky. So I'm trying to think, do I have any extra super chats left over? And if you guys want to send, you know, super chats, now is probably a good time. We're at kind of that point in the stream where I have less things to say. Ah, damn it. The real Jay Burden podcast experience is live tech support, you know, where I just kind of like fuss around. All right. I think that I don't. Oh, I did have one, which is from last night, which is Boss Grand. And this happened after the show ended. Thoughts on a Mini 14. This is interesting. I don't mean to get into gun autism, but essentially, and I sent him on Twitter. The Mini 14 is fine. And if you have one, don't get rid of it. But the juice is sort of not worth the squeeze. You know, it was popular in a time in which Mini 14s, which is, you know, for those referenced, it's the rifle from the A-Team. You know, it's kind of a wood-stocked semi-automatic rifle. Those were popular in a time in which they were wildly cheaper than AR-15s. You know, it was like 80% the cost, and it's probably 80% the cost. At 80% the cost, that's a good deal. But now, you know, when you can get a functional AR for $500 and the cheapest Mini 14 in the world is $1,000, it just doesn't make sense. Like, if you like it, if you want to have it, you know, fair enough. But it's not as good. You know, it's a little finicky. You know, it's kind of inherently, you know, and relatively speaking, inaccurate. You know, not bad, but just like, you know, for more money, you'd want it to be better. And it's not better, it's a little bit worse. And so, like, if you have one, keep it. You know, if you like it, I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but it's not quite an apples to oranges comparison, so to speak. Yeah, people talking about, you know, things in Nashville. I was actually in Nashville maybe about a year ago on my, you know, cross-country trip that I did right before, you know, I started the channel. And I quite like Tennessee. If I didn't love where I lived so much, I would consider moving. But I think that they're getting infiltrated by libtards. I think that Nashville and what's the other? Nashville, Louisville, and Chattanooga. That's the city I was looking for. Are kind of, you know, increasingly growing libtarded. But I think that the state legislature has taken actions to that. Some more gun autism in chat. And again, you know, I don't necessarily disagree with that, Doug Dimmadome, but look, I got a wedding to pay for, man, and I'm on a commission salary, and as they say, you know, the ceiling is limitless, but I'll put it this way: I haven't really got off the ground, so no money for Cold War battle rifles, at least for the time being. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying not to just you know, let you guys roast in dead air. Yeah, Volpace. That's sort of my take on it, so to speak. I actually kind of liked Chattanooga as a town. It's annoying to drive through, but I don't know. I love that area of the country. It's really beautiful, and as far as kind of cool little towns go, you know, it's still small enough that you can kind of just go wherever you want. It's not like an actual city, and they've got, you know, decent food, and the downtown is cool. Also, the world's only nice hiking hostel is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I've stayed there multiple times, and it's really affordable. Like, I've stayed there. It's like, I think it's like $100 for a 2-bedroom place. And like, it's a hostel, so like, it's not fancy and you have to do your own laundry and stuff, but like, I don't know, it's kind of worth it. Yeah, people complaining about the you know, Yankee libtard migration, which I've definitely seen, you know, living in a red state, or living in a, you know, red city. Oh, right. This is unrelated, and I will not read this on. All right, Paul W. Hall. I think Knoxville is still the best city in Tennessee. I don't know Knoxville super well. Winter EC, yeah, confirming that Chattanooga is great, but I hate to say it, guys. I think Chattanooga is full. Move elsewhere. Yeah, more guys talking about Tennessee. I just kind of like it as a state. I don't know. I just love mountains. I love Appalachia, and so like anything in that area is kind of good enough for me. I don't know. There is something, I think, to just like knowing where you belong. If you catch a Bluegrass show at the station in Nashville, highly recommended. Yeah, I haven't been to a Bluegrass show in a long time, like a really long time. I do love Bluegrass music, though. Billy String's new album came out, and I really like it. He recorded it with his dad. The album is called Me and Dad, right? Which I guess I should have been able to remember. That's quite a good new Bluegrass album. And I was really upset because I was going to see Benjamin Todd, the guy from Lost Dog Street Band. He's another good Bluegrass artist, but he canceled. So I really haven't been going to a lot of shows really at all. But Jeremiah, I'm glad you like the coast, because I guess someone has to, because again, there are already too many people in the mountains. And Doug Dimmadome is talking about uranium, which, you know what, is a little off topic. Yes, Nudge Unit, that is the meth guy. That is the meth guy. And Bryson, yeah, I think we're in agreement. There's nothing wrong with it. If you already have one, again, like I said, it's a fine gun. It's just, if you are a man of limited safe space and limited budget, I think it's an easy decision. Sorry guys, I feel like I don't have too much more to go with, just because I don't have too much more to add, and I don't want to just like torture you guys with dead air. So you know what? Actually, here's what I'll do. I'll remind you guys about the sponsor, and then we can go on for a little bit longer after this. So I was talking to JD, right, the guy who runs Axios, and he was letting me know that that 20% off code, the Beaver code, the link in the description, that's limited time, right? So if you guys want that 20% off, it goes away in about a week. And even if you don't want to commit money to it, what you can do is you can, click that link and you can give them your email. And basically you'll get kind of free mini workouts, little like tips and tricks, not quite, the full package, but a little taste for free for nothing other than your email address. And so I just want to push both of those out because again, like that 20% off deal, which is a really good deal, is limited time. And you know what? And this is really something I took away from the conversation last night is like, entropy is a real fact of life. And when entropy takes over, so to speak, I want all of you guys to make it. Yeah, Valero, I got to sell something, because it's certainly not happening at the day job. And I guess if the thing that I sell is for you guys to get big and buff, I think that's not the end of the world. Yeah, saying way the hippies and bluegrass. Yeah, this kind of happened, at least in my mind, because there's always been a crossover between hippies and folk music. Like the original like Flower Children, who were essentially kind of into aping English folk music, but also American folk music as well, right? Like when you think of people like Woody Guthrie, he was a flaming leftoid, but also when it comes to people like Doc Watson, who's kind of like the father of the like current crop of bluegrass artists, in some cases, literally, I guess, he got really popular in kind of the folk scene of the 60s, and he was a guy from, rural North Carolina, not too far away from where I live, blind guy. And he got picked up, by, in many cases, in addition to kind of like mountain people, also by like, kind of like hippie yuppies, that I should have differentiated hippies and yuppies, at different stages in time. And so that's how I got it, because my grandfather is a boomer, is a, pretty well-to-do guy, but he was kind of a hippie, at least at the time, at least more so. And so that's how he got into it. Full pace. I can't read that, but again, here's the thing, guys. I got nukes from Orbit on Teespring, which means I can't sell you shower curtains. For those who don't know, because my audience is grown a little bit. I essentially, I created a Teespring store with merch because I thought it was funny. And my plan was I wasn't going to make a profit on it. I was just going to sell it at cost, because I think it's funny. And I wanted, you guys to wear my merch. And so it's like, if I don't make any money from it, I don't care. And one of the products I made was a full-size shower curtain with my stupid little beaver logo right in the middle of it. It was like maybe 6 inches across. So it looked horrible. It was a piece of shit, but it was just funny that, I don't know, the idea that someone could have a shower curtain with my logo. But what got me taken down was there's a great system where you can make t-shirts on Teespring, and you can put things on the front and the back, but you only have to select one image for your listing, which means you can sell someone a t-shirt with something on the front, put things on the back, and never show them. And so I designed a t-shirt that had, it looked super normal. It just said the Jay Burden Show, had a little beaver logo on it. And in the back, in giant red block letters, it just said rapist on it, because I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And unsurprisingly, that resulted in my account being banned, not just like within an hour. It told me how long my account was active for. It was active for 26 seconds, which means it took the bot less than half a minute to realize that I was not allowed on their service. And I literally tried to make another account on another email address. And the moment I uploaded my file, I got banned again. So you know what? Maybe I'll come back to merch, but I don't know. It was like a funny idea. It was a funny meme, but it took a long time to set up. And the fact that it just got like yoinked like that. Yeah, Joshua Yarnell, I actually think that might be a record. I think that 26 seconds, that like if anyone can beat the Jay Burden Teespring speed run, DM me proof of that. And I won't give you anything, but I'll laugh about it. I'm getting other ideas for good Beaver products. Again, all of these Beaver related products are really good ideas. And again, maybe that I should have a leaderboard for Teespring speed runs, because that's a funny idea. Just harass them. It's like I can't make a. People are asking if I can make lampshades, and it's highly unrealistic. You know that. So look, guys, if you have 4 years and 6 million beavers, how many trees can they cut down? Anyway, I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble. All right, guys, this has been a fun one. I'm probably going to wrap it up. I appreciate it. It was fun. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I got a big guest on. Should be an interesting show for that number 100. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that after 100 is when we start season 2 of the Jay Burden Show. And I think season 2, and I've been teasing this for a while, is when I kind of pull back. And it's going to be relative, right? Like I'm still going to be putting out a lot of content, because I am, much like the Beaver, I am hardworking, and with the Protestant work ethic, I got to put something out there if I'm not, bringing in the big bucks. But so we'll probably have to pull back, right? Just because I've got a job now, getting married in 2 weeks, and priorities are shifting. So what I think we'll do is, and I've said this before, we'll go to 2 days. I think I can do 2. That'll give me time to do, other things in life, to prepare more for episodes than I have been. But I think that after 100, it's a nice round number. And thank you, Sneedmaster. I think that represents a good shift. That'll be season 2, so to speak, of the Jay Burden Show. Because again, like, it's been fun. I'm still going to keep doing it. 2 episodes a week is more than a lot of guys on this platform put out. And, I'll be able to set up a regular schedule, kind of like we have now. And the audio only episodes will probably continue at, a higher rate, just because I have a backlog to get through. But, so that's, I think, this might be the last week of 4 episodes a week, just because it is starting to get difficult to manage. And, again, I don't want to get overloaded. But all right, guys, I appreciate you coming out. This was a fun episode. Check out the links in the description. Use code BEAVER to get 25% off, or 20% off. Sorry, not to lie to you. And maybe you can get 20% off that giant waistline of yours. Can't even see your toes. I'm like Homer Simpson. So anyway, all right. Good night, guys.